Dear learners, welcome to this session. Today we will discuss about Indian Penal Code 1860 and human trafficking. This is a very good legislation passed in 1860 and amended from time to time as per the need. And in 2013, we find the Criminal Law Amendment Act. So now it takes care of human trafficking also, and so we have so many cases reported under the Crime Records Bureau. So we will discuss this legislation in view of human trafficking. Act number 45 of 1860, if we see section 340, then it talks about wrongful confinement. Whoever wrongfully restrains any person in such a manner as to prevent that person from proceeding beyond certain subscribing limits is said to confine that person wrongfully. So, this definition is valid on people who are trafficked because they are staying in captivity, they are confined. They are confined wrongfully because they cannot move. They have not agreed not to move, but they are abused, they are tortured, they are exploited and not allowed to move out of the captivity. So, 1860 legislation, which got amended later on in so many years, also talks about wrongful confinement of a person, and that is very important. In cases of human trafficking, we find that a person has been wrongfully confined in an area. Criminal force is there in section 350. Whoever intentionally uses force to any person without any person's consent in order to the committing of any offense, an offense is human trafficking, or intending by the use of such force to cause, or knowing it to be likely that by the use of such force he will cause injury, fear, or annoyance to the person to whom the force is used, is said to use criminal force to that other. So, this is very elaborative. In every offense of human trafficking, criminal force is used. If you just refer back to the definition of human trafficking, you will find the element of criminal force. Section 354B talks about assault or use of criminal force to women with the intent to disrobe. Any man who assaults or uses criminal force to any woman or abets such act with the intention of disrobing or compelling her to be naked shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which shall not be less than 3 years, but which may extend to 7 years, and shall also be liable to fine. So 354B talks about assault or use of criminal force to disrobe a woman. Section 354C talks about voyeurism. Any man who watches or captures the image of a woman engaging in a private act in circumstances where she would usually have the expectation of not being observed either by the perpetrator or by any other person at the behest of the perpetrator, or disseminates such image shall be punished on first conviction with imprisonment of either description for a term which shall not be less than 1 year, but which may extend to 3 years, and shall also be liable to fine and be punished on a second or subsequent conviction with imprisonment of either description for a term which shall not be less than 3 years, but which may extend to 7 years, and shall also be liable to fine. So the cyber crimes, the cyber crimes related to women, small children, even males are under this purview because we have seen that so many cases are reported wherein your privacy is not maintained. by the person or by the perpetrator. Stalking is mentioned under section 354D. Any man who follows a woman and contacts or attempts to contact such woman to foster personal interaction repeatedly despite a clear indication of disinterest by such woman, and this always happen in cases of human trafficking, that the people are stalking, you have been stalked by a person or by a pimp or by the agent or the middleman, or monitors the use by a woman on the internet, email, or any other form of electronic communication commits the offense of stalking. So it also takes care of the technological intervention in crime involving, your privacy, your dignity, and other rights, provided that such conduct shall not amount to stalking if the man who pursued to prove that it was pursued for the purpose of preventing or detecting crime, and the man accused of stalking has been entrusted with the responsibility of prevention and detection of crime by the state. So all the government officials will be prevented under this section. It was pursued under any law or to comply with any condition or requirement imposed by any person under any law, or in the particular circumstances such conduct was reasonable and justified. So, you will always not get the benefit till you prove that you acted in a reasonable and justified way, and you were entrusted a responsibility to prevent crime and, or detect crime, and by doing so you have done this act. Whoever commits the offense of stalking shall be punished on first conviction with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 3 years, and shall also be liable to fine, and be punished on the second or subsequent conviction, habitual offenders, with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 5 years, and shall also be liable to fine. Section 362 and 363. 362 talks about abduction. Whoever by force compels or by any deceitful means induces any person to go from one place is said to abduct that person. We find that from the source, the person is moved to the transit or and to the destination. So abduction is there. Punishment for kidnapping is there in 363. Whoever kidnaps any person from India or from lawful guardianship shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years, and shall also be liable to fine. A very important section in terms of children. 363A talks about kidnapping or maiming a minor for the purposes of begging. We have said that, trafficking is for begging also. So, whoever kidnaps any minor or not being the lawful guardian of a minor obtains the custody of the minor in order that such minor may be employed or used for the purposes of begging shall be punishable with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years, and shall also be liable to fine. A very important section. So please do not give alms on the road to anybody. Whoever maims any minor in order that such minor may be employed or used for the purposes of begging shall be punishable with imprisonment for life, and shall also be liable to fine. Whereas any person not being the lawful guardian of a minor employs or uses such minor for the purpose of begging, it shall be presumed, unless the contrary is proved, that he kidnapped or otherwise obtain the custody of that minor in order that the minor might be employed or used for the purposes of begging. So, the purpose is to use that person for begging, to earn by his exploitation. So, never pay alms to beggars, because this is the worst form of human rights violation, your legal rights violation. Section 370 talks about trafficking of persons. Whoever, for the purpose of exploitation, recruits, transports, harbors, transfers, or receives a person or person by using threat or using force or any other form of coercion, or by abduction, or by practicing fraud or deception, or by abuse of power, or by inducement, including the giving or receiving of payments or benefits in order to achieve the consent of any person having control over the person, recruited, transported, harbored, transferred, or received, commits the offense of trafficking. So we have find that this definition is very much in consonance with the definition given under the protocol to prevent trafficking. So, we have two explanations to this definition. The first explanation says the expression exploitation shall include any act of physical exploitation or any form of sexual exploitation, slavery, or practices similar to slavery, servitude, or forced removal of organs. A very good definition in the context of India. Second explanation talks about the consent of the victim is immaterial in determination of the offense of trafficking. The customers or the traffickers always used to try to get benefit of this fact that the innocence and the vulnerability of the person who has been trafficked has given him a chance to get a consent by that victim by fraud, deception, paying him money, using force, or exploiting that person. So the consent is not free consent. So explanation 2 clearly says that the consent is immaterial. So a victim of trafficking is a victim and not a criminal, not an accused, not a person who should be convicted. Whoever commits the offense of trafficking shall be punished with rigorous imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 7 years, but which may extend to 10 years, and shall also be liable to fine. Where the offense involves the trafficking of more than one person, it shall be punishable with rigorous imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 10 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life, and shall also be liable to fine. Where the offense involves the trafficking of a minor, it shall be punishable with rigorous imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 10 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life, and shall also be liable to fine. Where the offense involves the trafficking of more than one minor, it shall be punishable with rigorous imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 14 years, but which may extend to imprisonment for life, and shall also be liable to fine. So if you traffic a minor, you will have rigorous imprisonment for 10 years, and it can also extend for life imprisonment and fine. And if it involves one or more than one minors, then rigorous imprisonment of 14 years, which may extend to imprisonment of life, and you should also be liable to fine. If a person is convicted of the offense of trafficking of a minor on one then more occasions, then such person shall be punished with imprisonment for life, which shall mean imprisonment for the remainder of that person's natural life, and shall also be liable to fine. A very important provision for habitual offenders. When a public servant or a police officer is involved in trafficking of a person, then such public servant or police officer shall be punished with imprisonment for life, which shall mean imprisonment for the remainder of that person's natural life, and shall also be liable to fine. A public servant or a police officer is duty bound to protect the victims of human trafficking. So if they commit a crime, it is a very good provision that they should be held liable. 378 talks about exploitation of a trafficked person. Whoever knowingly or having reason to believe that a minor has been trafficked engages such minor for sexual exploitation in any manner shall be punished with rigorous imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years, but which may extend to 7 years, and shall also be liable to fine. A very important provision, because you are exploiting a child for sex trade. It can be for pornography or any kind of sexual exploitation in the massage parlor as domestic help, etc. 371 talks about habitual dealing in slaves. Slavery is prohibited in India. So now we have a section. Whoever habitually imports, exports, removes, buys, sells, traffics or deals in slaves shall be punished with imprisonment for life or with imprisonment of either description for a term not exceeding 10 years, and shall also be liable to fine. A very important provision to talk about a person's dignity, to protect a person's dignity. Section 372 talks about selling minors for purposes of prostitution, etc. Whoever sells, lets or to hire or otherwise disposes of any person under the age of 18 years with the intent that such person shall at any age be employed or used for the purpose of prostitution or illicit intercourse with any person, or for any unlawful or immoral purposes, or knowing it to be likely that such person will at any age be employed or used for any such purpose, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 10 years, and shall also be liable to fine. A very important provision in terms of minors, being sold in prostitution. Section 373 talks about buying minors for the purposes of prostitution, etc. Whoever buys or hires or otherwise obtains possession of any person under the age of 18 years with the intent that such person shall be at any age be employed or used for the purpose of prostitution or illicit intercourse with any person, or for any unlawful or immoral purpose, on knowing it to be likely that such person will at any age be employed or used for any such purpose, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description of a term which may extend to 10 years, and shall also be liable to fine. Section 374 talks about unlawful compulsory labor. Whoever unlawfully compels any person to labor against the will of that person shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with fine, or with both. So in cases of human trafficking for labor, this section is applicable. So we have discussed different provisions of Indian Penal Code, and we have understood that after the Criminal Law Amendment Act, in IPC, Indian Penal Code, human trafficking has been defined. Various sections have been incorporated to cater to the changing dimensions of trafficking. And in the end, I would just like to say that all these legislations are there to protect your dignity, and you cannot say that you were not aware about the law, or ignorance of law is no excuse. So stay safe and stay blessed with legal knowledge. Thank you all.